Olszynski Law Firm is an official sponsor of Top Bin 90, specializing in personal injury, criminal defense, DWI, family law, and workers' compensation. The Olszynski Law Firm provides professional, trusted legal services to clients facing a variety of challenges. With a team of experienced attorneys dedicated to protecting your rights, the Olszynski Law Firm is the legal support you can count on.
Hi, I'm Justin Olszynski, the founding partner of the Olszynski Law Firm. Me and my wife started this firm back in 2010 with the sole purpose of providing excellent service to our clients, giving our clients a personal touch because we had worked in bigger firms where we saw that not happening. We handle criminal defense matters, civil personal injury, wrongful death, workers' comp, and family law matters. We have a team of attorneys that care about the outcome of your case, and we will fight to make sure that you get the justice you deserve.
Hello and welcome to episode 66 of the Top Bin 90 podcast. We are back after, I don't know, even with the win, I'm a little disappointed, eliminated out of Leagues Cup play when, a win would have got us first place. Not looking back at it, even a draw could have really changed the fortunes for Charlotte. Obviously, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the match against Columbus Crew. The first minutes for Alan St. Maximin as a Charlotte FC player, and he had some things to say as well. Abada spoke on his future as well, and so we've got a lot to talk about on this show. And with that, I have my co-host, Mr. Brian Bam Media. How are you?
Yo, doing well. Missing you guys in the studio, but it's okay this week.
For sure. We just had to figure it out this week, so at least we're having a show,
Yes, sir.
And then we also have Mr. Aaron Bright, who does a lot of our content, a lot of our marketing, and it looks like he's a director at UNCG with that chair behind him. What's up, bro?
Yeah, not that much, man. Just happy to be here.
Can you give us some context on that director's chair?
This was actually a graduation present from my roommate's dad, so it was a good gift. But the best thing I have on my wall is the first ever screen print that we used.
Hey.
I
love that. I should put mine behind me. I got this plain wall that I'm using, and so I look like I'm a prisoner, but it's okay.
Well, you have Brian's scarf wall, so it's hard to compete against that.
With that said, let's get right into it. Obviously, Brian, I want to start off with Leagues Cup elimination. Obviously very, very disappointing. I think as the seasons go by, year 3 of Dean Smith, this is the point where we start having certain expectations of this team, right? And this was a competition that could have brought a lot of fruits for Charlotte FC, especially how it started, and ultimately, neither Ashley or Dean said it's a failure, but I do think it's a failure, just with how you were able to win your first 2 games, you're playing an eliminated team, and hindsight's 2020. If you would have won that match, you would have you'd have been the number 1 team seeded in MLS. So give us your overall thoughts. Let's start with the Pachuca game.
Yeah, I just think that you set the table so well. Obviously, going into the tournament, it's kind of up in the air as to how things can go. You have a result not go your way. It's pretty much rotate and just get those games out of the way and move on. But once you start with the win, especially the Pumas win, where I was like, wait a minute, 3-0. This is completely unexpected for, I think, most people. And then following it up with another 2-0 win, even though things weren't going well. They answered a lot of questions for me in those 2 games. You could show up in a big game, and then when things weren't going well, you still found a way to fight through it and get the result you needed. So going into game 3, it was okay, well, they've already answered a bunch of the questions. They should be able to at least stick this out and get a result, at minimum a point. And, it was definitely there for them. It's obviously unfortunate to get the PK. Props to Alan St. Maximin. I do think that's one of these silver linings from both that game and then the MLS debut we'll talk about later. But him winning the PK, Goodwin having the opportunity at the penalty, it was there for them, even though things, I would say, overall in that game weren't really going their way. They still had a chance, and to let it slip away again, I feel like that's, and we could see it in the expression on Ashley Westwood's face after
Yeah.
in the post match. It felt like, while he didn't say it was a failure, it definitely felt like it hit home pretty hard. I mean, he even mentioned, like, we let this one slip away again. Like, he mentioned, like, this is starting to add up, like, as if, like, it's definitely felt like it was on Ashley's mind. And you could also see from the photos of Rodolfo Aloco, like, it definitely also hit him pretty hard that he missed his looks in that game and they had a chance to win. So it, at some point, the ceiling does have to get questioned about Dean Smith's era, and just like, how far can they actually go?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like we've mentioned multiple times, first 2 seasons, you're like, okay, you stabilize this, finish fifth, finish fourth, but we need to see that next level. And I'm like, like, again, to me, like, I classify this under, like, Miami rotated Miami, we lost. Atlanta was there for the taking in the Open Cup. We lost that match. And here again, we have an opportunity to do something, and we're not able to. Last year. That's why I brought that up during the press conference with Ashley and Dean. I'm like, hey, like, these are crucial moments that you guys are letting slip through, and it's not like there's like, you look at what Nashville is doing right now and you're like, wow, and within 18 months, BJ has this team, competing at a very high level. They've already won a trophy and they're one of the favorites now to win MLS Cup.
Yep.
And so contrast to us, year three, we're still just an okay average team at best, trying to fight for top four. Aaron, give us your thoughts on the Leagues Cup.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Brian. It's hard to look at it now where you have two bottom of the table MLS teams, that they went in above us. I mean, just Austin and Columbus, and we just beat Columbus convincingly, and it's like, what were the tactics like? I know after the match, this weekend, Dean mentioned that it wasn't a failure. He was asked again about getting eliminated, and he mentioned we weren't scored on for 272 minutes or whatever, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Got scored on and got eliminated. But another one is that he mentioned that we would have played the last 10 minutes differently if he knew that a draw would have gotten us through. Or I forget how he worded that, but it was like the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was an
game,
interesting thing he mentioned.
It's, did we go into the game like, oh, let's sit back and be happy with the draw, or I don't really know what he meant by that, because I think everybody went into it knowing that we need to win the game, but I'm assuming that he's mentioning that they were chasing the win too hard, and that's how they wound up losing. But it's like, there was a lot of chances in that game, and a lot was missed. But it goes back to Brian's point of, or both of you guys' points of getting over that hump. How are we not there yet? Dean has had his off seasons. Fresh players, fresh legs have came in, and it's just like, what do we need? Do we need more players? Do we need to change the rules? Do we need to come to Miami and get the rules in our favor? But
yeah, I would say I do want to, and I had this conversation with him on post Leagues Cup elimination. It's like, it's hard for me to blame this specific game on Dean Smith, because Tokolomati had a chance. Ashley Westwood had a chance. Like, there was multiple clear chances that we had to get to score in this game. Archie missed a penalty, right? So it's pretty hard to look at the coach and be like, yo, like, 4 different players had an opportunity to get this over the line, right? But at the same time, this just adds to that, Dean Smith not being able to, kind of get this game over the line. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Like, I want to separate both. Like, this one is pretty hard for me to, like, say, yo, like, what else could he have gotten? Like, Allen ASM came in, drew a penalty. Archie missed it. They scored in extra time, to win it 1-0 Pachuca. Like, it's really hard for me to blame Dean specifically for this game, but these things keep getting added to, this perception that now it's building where, like, can you get us over the line, right? And I think that's the most important thing. And now, we really only have MLS to focus on and to try to get over that hump, and so
It's
that's
hard. I agree with you. You can't say this game. I mean, this is just one of those games where like we probably should have just won, but we didn't. But it makes you, right after that loss of we got eliminated or Wednesday night, whenever it was, it just makes you think about, when we lost to Atlanta in at the Plex, and it's like, we keep missing these opportunities. That was a silly game to lose. So I think that's what makes these worse, because we're not far away from a final, whatsoever. It's easier to get to a final, like just game wise, versus the MLS playoffs by just getting a trophy in a tournament. But
yeah.
that's a conversation another day.
Brian, given the nature of how this went versus US Open Cup, how do you feel? Do you still have this sense that Dean doesn't truly like put true value in these cup tournaments?
No, I think he did for Leagues Cup. I think the reason I don't think he did for US Open Cup is because when you compare the roster he was putting out compared to what other MLS teams were doing, by the time the round of 16 came around, like, because I was methodical because I got some heat and pushback for calling Dean out for the rotation that he did. And so I meant, like, San Jose played their full, like a lot of these teams played their full 11 by the time it got to the round of 16 and were ready to try to push in that tournament and make things happen. I think it was Charlotte and New England who ended up playing each other. It was like the only two teams that rotated. So they were actually playing each other that weekend. But like, so for me, that one was way more on Dean, because you're at a point where it's like around a 16, you're at the Plex, you're playing against your Southern rivals, a team you should beat, a team that didn't fully rotate, even though Dean said that they did. They still had like a couple of their key guys out there. And then Charlotte didn't have any of their key guys on the roster, like dressed. They were sitting in the crowd with us.
Yeah.
And so I think those changes, that tournament for me, completely on Dean. I think he approached this one differently. You can tell because he played Pep most of the time, switching him around, moving him into different formations, using it maybe as an opportunity to see like, hey, how do I play without Kerwin Vargas? Because we haven't really gotten into that yet, where it's like, I don't think we realize how key Dean viewed Kerwin Vargas. He literally changed his formation since he's been gone, and his system, because of one guy that not a DP, just because of his defensive presence and his two-way play, has now changed. He's playing a flat three midfield a lot more to try to cover, because he doesn't feel as comfortable with the defensive work rate on the right side without Kerwin.
Great point.
So like he's had to move some things around, and but he played Pep and Ashley that whole tournament. He played everybody, and he started getting Allen St. Maximin reps in that turn. Like, so I think he approached it far different. He still rotated around, used the fact that he had extra spots available, but those spots were also available in the US Open Cup. You could have rotated a little bit and still made sure you had your guys there to, like, again, get you over the line.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point on the Kerwin Vargas take. I agree with you. Again, it's lack of options when players are leaving, right? Stuff that we talked about that you need to be prepared for. And to me, it continues to feel like Charlotte's a little bit more reactive than proactive,
Yeah.
Aaron, if you're looking at the bright side or the positives, what are some of the positives that we could take from this tournament in Leagues Cup?
I think it comes from, like, I mean, Brian, really quickly to your point, like a lot of people thought that we rotated during this tournament, but that was an illusion of like literally lack of players and like fitness. I mean, through, people getting knocks, or like you said, Vargas leaving, Zaha leaving, like we played our best available players really. But speaking on that, the positive, I think definitely is Tiger Smalls. I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore the elephant in the room. Like Tiger is barely managed to get minutes, except for these tournaments, and I think he really showed out for a lot of people. I know he has those hardcore fans that were really happy for it, and then he also has the people that have been asking why he has a roster spot. So he was definitely a positive. Abada gained a lot of confidence as well, and I think he showed that versus Columbus. I mean, as soon as he got that penalty draw, he ran to the ball. He didn't talk to anybody. He picked up the ball immediately and ran to the spot. So I think a confident Abada is really good for this team. but I think he does get in his head a lot. So if he can keep this streak up in general and go forward, but I think literally those two wingers have been the biggest impact for us, and they learned a lot and got a lot of just time they honestly deserve for the work they're putting in.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great take. One of the things that people talk and the media day we went to, both Marco Fabian and who else was there, Brian?
Greg Garza.
Greg Garza mentioned that like it's a great opportunity for players that don't get minutes to get minutes, and actually try to establish themselves. And so what are some of your positive takeaways from Leagues Cup, if there are any, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Dean messed with the system a little bit, like I was saying before, between a flat 3 and back to like that kind of 4-4-1-1, 4-2-3-1 that he plays, like being able to switch back and forth and kind of figure out success, and then also like learning from some of the mistakes of both, I think is a plus moving forward. At the end of the day, like you get knocked out of the tournament, almost everybody will get knocked out of that tournament except for the one winner. And so you still learn like, hey, we have some like flexibility with how we have to rotate our formation. I also will add, I think Aloko and Will Cleary also got some good reps. And I think the more reps you can especially give to Will Cleary, because Byrne keeps getting dinged up. And I am super high on Will Cleary right now. So the more reps you can kind of get him and get him up to just maybe starting just snuff where he's at the point where he's almost weekly, because I think he's close to that spot where he's really pushing Byrne for that right back spot. And then I think Aloko's reps get him to the point where he makes that assist in this Columbus game, like with the layoff to Pep Biel in the second half. And I think him just getting the run and figuring out how to like put pressure on these defenders 1v1 in space late in games, like those opportunities in Leagues Cup, I think lead him to kind of just getting his feet under him for that moment in the Columbus Crew game.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I actually want to talk about both of the fullbacks, going into that game, because I mean Schnag had an assist too,
Yep.
So but yeah, just recapping on Leagues Cup, I think at the end of the day, like for me, again, it's a failure. They need to learn how to get over the line. So for this season, for this season to be considered a success, they got to have a deep run in playoffs, which right now I'm not too confident in, because I just don't know what type of Charlotte FC is going to show up. Is it going to be the Charlotte FC that can beat Pumas 3-0 and have a convincing game even with players missing? Or is it going to be the one against Pachuca that's going to miss opportunities and then lose 1-0, right? And I think last year, I don't think we've learned from that playoff run last year where 2 home games we weren't able to get over the line. And I'm seeing some of the same mistakes from last year. And there's a lot of changes happening right now, in this squad. And it's like, are we going to be able to correct and have like a full functioning team by the time playoff starts, right? Zaha has left, ASM's come in, and he's kind of looking good. So that's a good bright spot. Corwin Vargas is out. They're very close to signing a new player here. And so we'll see what that looks like. I think we should have an update on that by the end of the week. So we'll see, right? And so Leagues Cup. All right, let's move on. Actually, I want to read this comment. The thing for me with Abada is that he's not technically enough. He's really not able to be clinical when he has a chance to score. I don't know if at this point in his career, if that changes. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think we saw that, where, there's opportunities where he scores and there's 1v1s that he misses, so I think we were in the press box and I think I called one of those like in game time. I'm like, yeah, this one's not going in, because I know he'll score one, and I know if he has another 1v1, like he's not the player that's going to get you 2-3 goals, even though he has opportunities some matches to do that. So
yeah, his biggest thing is he just needs time, because the game moves at 1,000,000 miles a minute for him. Like he is constantly 100, and I think sometimes he just needs to slow down. If it's
it's a good point.
Getting down the wing, being open, and then just like ripping it across, like there literally might not be anybody there, but his mind is just like, I just beat 2 guys, like either physically or technically. I'm sitting in across, and it's like, oh, like to who? So.
For sure.
I
Awesome.
think
All right, let's
Tocomati's had that issue too, with just some of his finishing lately. Like both the strikers too, Goodwin as well. Just like
yeah.
hopefully, I mean that's one thing ideally that Allen Maximin changes is just like getting these guys enough volume to where they get their confidence back up and to where they're ripping chances. I think that's one of the issues. Maybe Abada's getting a few more looks, but like Tocomati's like getting like we called it this last game when he had the one, and then it's just like he's just not getting the volume to actually just get
be
those.
impactful. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about this Columbus Crew game, and we'll get into some of these questions here in a second as well. Um, Obviously, you needed a response from the team, right? And we got that against Columbus Crew. Charlotte has to continue to fight for that top four finish. This was an important game to do that, right? Um, Brant Bronico with a whatever 27th second goal.
29 second, I think.
29. It's like
We've been
we got
over
like
this so
three
many
different
times.
things. Right? The third fastest goal in Charlotte FC history. Abada picks up a penalty, so we're up 2-0 by the first 10 minutes of the game. And then Columbus pull one back near the end of that first half to make it 2-1. And when you talked about, Brian, a little bit about seeing like a different Charlotte FC, I think this time where I'm like, oh, this feels like a game that could end 2-2, and they're actually able to win this with a magical goal by Pep BL, right? And so just the setup, Cleary, a local, like you mentioned, setting up Pep for a perfect strike to make it 3-1. Really good overall. I like the positivity from this team, right? Kind of being able to bounce back. That's important, right? And so I do want to first talk about the fullbacks, right? Since you've already touched on them a little bit. Starting is Nathan Byrne and Harry Toffolo. Toffolo's been out with an injury. Nathan Byrne's been out in an injury. But like you mentioned, Cleary looks up to par, if not right there, to be a starting right back. Obviously, he put in that cross to local, and then and then Schnegg as well. With that phenomenal look for Brant Bronico in the first goal, right? So, from a fullback depth perspective, I'm like, okay, like this is good. You've got competitions. Neither Toffolo or Byrne can sit and kind of feel comfortable in their positions, right? And when they get injured, it's good to know that there's two guys that can replace them and just be up to par.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Cleary for me almost. I mean, there's still some learning. Obviously, he's got to do. He's a young player, just getting his feet under him at the professional level. But I'm almost ready to just see him week in and week out at this point, just to see if he's really got it. Again, since his debut, I've been extremely impressed with him. Schnegg is doing his job as well on the left. His passing is sublime when he's on. That through ball to Bronico was really, really nice. Obviously, Bronico being able to hold to stay on side on that was pretty difficult to do in that moment, and got kind of fortunate. But at the end of the day, like that pass was awesome, and he's put in a number of great crosses and switch passes and things like that on that left side. So that position, I think we're lucky. Honestly, I would say decently comfortable with most of the back line, even though they haven't kept the clean sheets this last year. I feel like out of all the positions, they probably have the most depth there. Is funnily enough, even though they haven't kept the clean sheets like they did. I feel like if Kessler goes down, I'm okay with Morrison going back, and we've already seen a decent amount of Morrison, and the team hasn't like taken a huge step down in those spots. And I think the same with Privet. I mean, we saw this last game against Columbus, like Tim Ream has these moments where 1v1, he's just not quite up. That's not his strength, and he gets caught in these 1v1 situations, like the header with Chase Adams. He kind of goes over the top of him, and that we've seen it at the U.S. men's national team with Charlotte. It's just not his strength. Now the other intangibles, the experience he has, his positioning, his passing, there's strengths there that go missing if you switch for Privet. But I think overall depth along the back line, like we're not seeing like a gap where like, man, we're not going to get anything out of that position.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Aaron, you want to touch on that a little bit as well? Obviously, also, Frederick Henry Kessler, who when fit, he's a proper player.
Yeah.
The problem is that he's not always fit,
Yep.
but having him, in that rotation with Morrison, with Andrew Privet, is a positive for this team.
Yeah, I mean, to keep it brief, to Brian's point, we are very lucky that we are we have deep depth with our back line because there is what seems to be injury after injury, and it's kind of just like yeah, you're gonna sit for 2 weeks, but we're good. We have so and so to take your spot. So I think we're really fortunate, and if that was not the case, we would be a whole lot worse off this season. So I'm thankful for it.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, and then moving on to the midfield, obviously we've seen a couple of reps of Luca De La Torre kind of playing in that higher position now that Pep Biel, at least the last few games has been thrown on the right wing for more necessity than actually wanting to be there. Even like Dean joked in the press conference, like he had to remind Pep he's still being productive off that wing because it's clear that, Pep Biel wants to play centrally, and so he doesn't mind playing on the wing. And we've asked him before. He's like, nah, my position is more at the 10. So what do you make so far of Luca De La Torre, Brian? We've seen a little bit more of a spark for him, but I still just don't think it's enough.
Yeah, it hasn't been maybe the difference completely. Like I don't think we've seen him take over a game, which is I think what people, me included, are kind of looking for. Like, can he really take over a game the same way like Westwood does at times, where he just does the extra runs, but then also makes the extra passes, picks up a couple of assists, crashes late into the box, does like all those things where you're just like by the end of the game, you're like, man, that was like a real class performance from Westwood, where like you're seeing like, hey, without Westwood doing this, I don't know how far this team can go. Like that's kind of what we've seen from Westwood multiple times now throughout his tenure. And it's like, I don't think we've come close to seeing that moment from Luca. And I think that's what his contract signifies. That's what the signing was kind of signified, to evolve this team and be like, hey, this guy can be a difference maker, where like the ceiling is now raised. Players around him get better because of his distribution, his opportunity to kind of get you in on goal in the final third, those kind of things. And we haven't quite seen it enough. I think it's definitely been, he's come further along since the World Cup break. But I think we're still missing a little bit from him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with every player, like, I don't want to like rag on them from the get go, but you got to give them time to adapt to the team, adapt to the style, adapt to like who they're playing with as well. But I think more towards the end of this season, I want to see more from Luca De La Torre, right? He came in as one of the key players for this season, right? And so I want him to kind of grow into games and be a player that we can trust more so here in that final third of this season, right? And so I hopefully he becomes an important player for Charlotte FC. From what we've seen from him so far, there's just for me is just moments, Aaron.
Yeah, I think the biggest, I think viewing it from like the fans' perspective, I think the biggest letdown is like when this signing was announced, everybody said this is a Bronico that can attack. And I think that kind of set the expectations like really high for people. And I was like, this is great. This is what we need. But I mentioned after the match on Saturday that right now I think Diani would be the better shout. Like, Diani can get forward and make a smart pass, make an intelligent pass. He can dribble. So I think he probably deserves some time. I think I'm kind of shocked that he hasn't seen some time as of lately. But like you said, it is halfway through the season. Like we're not out on De La Torre or anything. I think it's just he needs to step up and fill that role that he was brought in for, or it's going to be one of the things like we just have a bunch of midfielders that aren't elevating each other and they're not fighting for a spot. I think that's why Cleary and everybody in the back line is so strong, is they're constantly fighting for a spot and they're making each other better. So
Absolutely. And Brant Bronico, you can never count him out, and he scored a goal this week.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him about that today because he was in the press conference. What is it about his game that, because he always, like, Dean always benches him to start a season. Like, it's It's been all 3 years. But then by the end of the year, he pretty much becomes one of his key guys where he starts like the last 10 to 15 games plus. And so it seems like he's rotated out, and he's talked about it. Like he mentioned, it's just mentality. Like he never counts himself out. I mean, I think we know this now for 5 straight years of seeing him play.
Yeah.
Like, that dude, like you can bench him. You can say like somebody else is signed and he's not going to be in the 11, and that dude just goes back after it, and just he has his routine, and he knows how to. He just believes in, like, he knows his process and knows how to get back on the field. And by the end of the season, I think it just comes down to trust. Like, as the field of players that you count on shrinks, because it just does, like, hey, you go from 18, 20, 23 guys to, like, it's playoff time. Now I'm down to 14, 15 guys you're actually going to play to come to playoffs. He's just in that group. And that's just what happens because Dean knows he can trust him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I mean, he is undeniable, Brant Bronico. And so I think we all learned that after third coach, Dean Smith came in and Brent was still getting in the lineup, right? So we never count him out. And it's good, players like that you need on the team. We've talked about that. And it's good to see him get a goal, sketches himself in Charlotte FC history as the third fastest goal as well, So great on him. I do also want to touch a little bit on ASM, right? The star signing for Charlotte FC this window, star shining so far, I'd really, from what I've seen, some very, very positive, bright things from ASM. Drew a penalty in the first game against Pachuca. He didn't take it, but Archie took it, right? And so that was positive. And his play, like, we kind of needed that for Charlotte FC. We need somebody who's a little bit more exciting, right? And I think we're getting a lot of that from ASM, right? And to Brian's point, right, earlier, like, he's going to be a guy that's going to give you assists, that's going to increase the volume for a lot of your players up top. I mean, the very first one I can think of is that ball he gave to Abada in that 1v1 where Abada chipped the goalkeeper and it just didn't go in, right? But he is an explosive player, loves to take people on, and from these first 2 games, I'm very impressed with ASM so far. Aaron, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I expected ASM to be impressive, and I think my only worry was how tough he was going to be for the league. And he's proven himself strong so far. I mean, close to like 70-ish minutes. And he's taking a lot of the knocks that Zaha was taking. Like, let's be honest. I mean, we've seen multiple. I mean, he got fouled in the back like 5 or 10 minutes after him coming in, like a really hard foul, and was down for a little bit. And came right back into the game and didn't lose a step. And he has that level of maturity. I think he's been through, a lot of diversity, especially over these past, few teams that he's been on. But it seems like he does a really good job of letting those go. He wasn't in the ref's ear, wasn't in anybody's ear. I think he wants to, get back in those situations by putting on a flashy show. To your point, it is also nice watching a Shaw FC game and hearing a crowd pop when it's not a goal. There's been very few players in the history where they're dribbling down the wing and the crowd actually gets loud because of a skill move or something like that. So it's a fun product to watch, but it also adds another layer of just skill to Charlotte in general for, this guy can take someone on, and not to mention how much faster he is than Zaha. Like, he looks electric, like at the field level. I can only imagine, watching a game higher than that. So I think he's just good for the energy of the team, and he's a great leader. Like, he goes out there level-headed, let's get this done, and let's win a game.
Yep. Brian, given that he hasn't played a competitive match since May, were you surprised with, what you've seen from ASM these first 2 games, right? Like, it feels like, obviously, he's not match fit for 90 minutes, but the time he's in, he's very productive. You can tell that there's a big difference when you have him on and when you don't.
100%. I think actually this also goes props to Dean to, like, kind of set this situation up. He's being very methodical with his approach. He knew, I think, to give him 20-something minutes in the Pachuca game. I mean, obviously the game state was nil-nil. So at that point, he's like, okay, this is an opportunity for him to kind of just see if he can make the difference. He did, and it was there for them. And then I think in this one, he actually decided to push it a little bit because I think he said the physios, and we talked about it in the press conference again today, like they didn't quite want him to go to 45 minutes, but Dean felt like, hey, let's see if we can push a little bit. It's 2-1. The game is getting a little bit closer than it needs to be. If we give him a little bit longer run, because Columbus had also rotated pretty heavily in that game. We didn't really talk about that aspect of it. They had started to bring in their starters at halftime as well, like Bryce Mendez, their new DP, but they had also rotated a decent amount. So I think it was an opportunity for Maxi again to get a little bit of a longer run in a game state that was positive and an opportunity to kind of flip the script back, get that game finishing goal, which again, he helped set up, like made the switch pass that then got it to BL, who got it to Cleary, got it into Oloko and back to BL. So he was a part of that switch. Plus, he also, like you said, Jorge made set up a bottom for his 1v1, set up, I think it was Archie for another one.
Yep.
Like, he set up multiple big chances in that game. So he did most of the offensive production work in that second half. So I think it was also just good timing from Dean to be like, hey, how should I set him up first? Or just momentum, just build momentum as you get the minutes under him. Now, because he came off the field healthy, he's good for 45. How close is he to 60 minutes? How close is he to a start in the next week or so? And so I think he's probably a bit ahead of speed right now, at least fitness wise, compared to what Dean expected or anybody expected at this point. So if he's willing to push him, like more than the physios are asking him to be pushed, then people are feeling pretty good about the situation overall. And then I think the other thing is, for me, he seems like he's going to be a ceiling raiser for the players around him. And I think Jorge, you, me, and Caleb talked about, for me, I just don't feel like there were enough guys on this team right now that are able to raise the ceiling of the players around them.
Absolutely.
I think that Charlotte has been missing. And I think that's literally been one of the main things Maxi has said multiple times at this point. He's like, I'm going to make the players around me better. I'm going to set them up with chances. They're going to score goals. I'm going to, deliver in these different ways, which means like my team around me is going to be better and they're going to win games. Like that's kind of been his main message. And so I think that's also it's clear, it's direct, and he has a vision for what needs to be done and how he can be a part of it. And we just don't hear that kind of transparency. I haven't, at least a lot of the time. I think we get a decent amount of generic kind of answers, but he's been very direct on like how he's going to be a part of this team and how he can make them better and everybody around him better and how they can win games with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And also from like contrary to Zaha a little bit, who was a little bit more, could be aggressive at press conferences, could say things, I feel like the way ASM approaches it is, in a very kind of direct, but in a good, like kind of inspiring way, like more like, not that Zaha wasn't authentic, but like more like there's a lot of authenticity in terms of what he's saying. And I did like, I think it was Manny that asked them about, Pep BL, and he's like, yeah, he's the star of the team. I'm here to help him. Like, like he's not like, clearly you're one of the stars of the team as well, right? But like he's kind of like, like I'm gonna earn this. It had that feeling towards it. And also, when I thought about ASM for this team, and when we're looking back at his goals/assist ratios, right? For me, like the type of DP for him to continue to be effective and not score or assist as much is, like you mentioned, creating big chances for other players. If I see that output of volume from him, and not as many goals, I'm okay with that, right? Because if his game is more of that, I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, what we're gonna have to be asking questions more of is those players that receive those opportunities, right? Because that's also gonna be very telling. Like, can you finish up a Maxi setup, right? And so I'm good with that. Also, do you guys think, and I'll start off with you, Aaron, one of the first things he mentioned was the turf. He's going to have to get used to the turf, right? Since I think he said he made his debut in the Europa League at 15, and this is the first time, he has to deal with turf, right? And so that's another person talking about the turf at Charlotte FC. Not only the Charlotte players, but I think Panthers players have mentioned it in the past too. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's been a big conversation with Panthers players. I mean, there's been multiple games where we'll see like wide receivers on the Panthers go in the locker room and change their cleats and come back out. But I noticed it. I like literally think in the Pachuca game, as soon as he came on, he slipped like twice, and I was like, oh, like, it is something different, especially for like for just a stylish player as well. His footing is always going to be different, or he's going to be doing something to the ball, off ball, whatever. I think he did a good job handling the different bounces. There were a lot of balls that were flying in the air to him, from every direction. But a lot of the stuff was like slipping off ball as well, I noticed. And then like some skill moves that either lost his footing or whatever that might be. But it just has to come with time. I don't think this is one of the things where we're going to put down sod for Maxi and Charlotte. So again, it's just getting his footing. But I saw a comment online. It was under the reel that we posted about him talking about it. That was like, if this is a level where he's at, where he doesn't feel comfortable and he's only played, dude's played 60 minutes. He said he doesn't feel comfortable on the field that he's playing on. Like, imagine 6 games from now, he gets 300 minutes under his belt, 3, 4, 500. Like, I would love to see it.
Absolutely. Brian, is turf going to be an issue? Is it just something that he's going to have to deal with? Talk to us about that. I'm going to grab my charger real quick because my laptop's about to die. Go.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I would say it eventually will turn into an advantage for him because it's going to be the field that Charlotte FC players play on week in and week out, at ASM plays on week in and week out, 17 plus games a year. And it becomes an advantage. Like, everybody else complains about NYCFC playing on a baseball field besides guess who? New York City, because their home field advantage is pretty significant there. Now, I would imagine long-term, they obviously want to be in their new stadium like they will be. But at the same time, up until that point, I mean, right now, New York's one of the top home teams. And a big part of it is because they play on a smaller field that everybody else complains about because they're not used to it. And like the sand being like covered up. I think it was some, I forget who it was from Philadelphia. This last game was like posting videos about like it was like literally just not grass. It was just like little patched up. I don't even know what it was, but there's like patched up like on the field of play from this last week when New York played Philly this last weekend. And so, you take advantage of it how you can. I think right now is obviously a disadvantage, probably a little bit for Allen, just because he's getting used to it. But over the long term, it's going to become an advantage for him because that's what Charlotte, again, he and the rest of Charlotte FC are going to be accustomed to. And yeah, I mean, turf, unless they figure out a whole new grass growing system where they can do it with turf like they do in like Tottenham or whatever, like unless they do something like that, like turf is staying because you have it as a multi-use facility and grass is just not compatible.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. Long term, it could be an advantage because once he gets used to it, like you mentioned, like it's gonna be a whole different Maxi. And I mean, I'm already happy, content with what I've seen so far from Maxi. Again, it's just more, can you continue to show up for Charlotte FC? Again, I always mention this, for me, there's going to be 7 to 9 games during the season that you as a DP are going to make the difference. And then the big one is in the playoffs, right? And so hopefully, we stay within that top 4 reach. And then when we get to playoffs, like, hey, again, like we said about Zaha last year, you're one of our guys now. You and Pep, get us out of this. Show us, that, if we go through, it's going to be because of you or because of Pep BL, right? Or both of you, And so with that said, let's move on to the Toronto match this Wednesday. Toronto coming off of their first win since April, right, Brian?
April 4th. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, April 4th.
April 4th. All right. And so Charlotte visiting Toronto. Obviously, it's going to be a tricky game for Charlotte. What are you expecting this match, Brian?
I mean, I don't think it should be too tricky. This should be pretty straightforward. We'll see. I mean, but Toronto's without Osorio because he's hurt right now, and he's a key guy for them in the midfield. And then Mihailovic picked up a red card, so they're missing two of, I would say,
Sorry, he did pick up a red card.
Their key guys in the middle. But I mean, it's Charlotte on the road. These situations are never guaranteed. So I do think this is a big moment. I think this is a big week. I think this is a big stretch of games overall. That's why I asked that question to Dean at the post-match presser about how he's kind of viewing these different sections of the season. If you look at the next 7 games, 5 of them are on the road, but it's like all against really favorable opponents. Bronico mentioned it as well. Like, we're playing teams that are below us in the table. This is when we have to really make an impact and push for top 4. It's like right now. Dean mentioned this is a big week, a big opportunity for us to go, and if we get results in all these games, we get 7 to 9 points. Now it's a great week. Now we've actually made, strides up the table like they need to. And I think they have to this week. I mean, Dean hasn't lost to Toronto in the last 4. And then on the weekend, he's never lost to DC. So this week needs to be a big week for this club.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I say tricky too, it's more on the lack of Charlotte being able to capitalize than actually the opponent.
No, 100%.
And we've seen that, Aaron, what do you make so far of this game? Is it 3 points for Charlotte and Toronto? What are you thinking?
I mean, just going off your point of it's tricky based on Charlotte's track record. I think I'm the biggest advocate of saying when this team should win convincingly, something goes wrong. Pair that with an away game. Charlotte should get 3 points here in 2 days, but it's a short week. We're dealing with the knock or a couple of knocks, whatever it might be, and rotating players. We should probably win this game 3-4-0. But again, it's one of those games where are the players in their heads like we're gonna walk up there and stomp them and come back home, or do we get a confident Charlotte that actually plays strong and respects their opponent? So it's just kind of the flip of the coin. Going back to I don't know if that's a Dean thing or a mentality thing. So we'll see.
Yeah. Brian, is it time for us to see ASM's first start, or is it too early?
I mean, it's got to be getting real close. If it's not this Wednesday, I would imagine it's got to be pushing for Saturday at home. I mean, Dean said he was fine for this last 45 minutes. Like, everything checked out clear. He did the extra running because I think he mentioned like if you play less than 52 minutes, there's an extra drill and training. So he's cleared. Like, he's passed every test so far. Everything's been good. And if you're at 45 minutes, I mean, to get a start, you only need to be able to go another 15. So I would imagine he's gotta be quite close. And I'd imagine Dean is rearing to have him start. I'd imagine Pep Biel is probably rearing to have him start because that means it kind of takes the question away of whether or not he's lined up on the wing or back centrally. I'd imagine that once ASM's out there starting, Biel goes back centrally and they see if that'll, they can go back to their main structure they've been using most of the season and see if that'll work as is. So I'd imagine from multiple perspectives, a lot of people are ready to see ASM out there from the jump. So I'd imagine it's this week. Just Wednesday might be pushing it a little bit because it is a short week, right? And Dean has been very clear. Like,
it's a great point.
I'm not rushing him, even though he pushed it a little bit this last weekend more than he said he was going to. So we'll see. But I think if I had to bet, I think I would bet on Saturday at home.
Yeah. I think I would agree with you. I also don't see it as a bad thing if he just plays in 45 minutes this game against Toronto in the first half, right?
Okay.
And so kind of get him up to speed. Obviously, I think at home we can deal with it more given that home advantage of him not starting. But a game against Toronto away where the points are there to be taken, there's a good opportunity for him to start him off the get-go, right? And so I wouldn't mind seeing him off the start and he just plays the first half, 45 minutes, right? But then again, it makes more sense for him to play him, or to give him an actual start this Saturday. And I agree with you. Either this Wednesday or this Saturday, we're going to see a start from ASM, and I'm curious to see, right? Obviously, Pep Biel is probably chomping at the bit to get back to just being the starter in that 10 role out rather than on the wing. So nice, awesome. And so let's do a little bit of a score prediction for this Toronto game. Brian, what are you thinking?
I mean, I think they win. I'm gonna go 2-1. Like I mean, I'm confident that they should be able to produce. I mean, it's gonna still be. I mean, it's MLS. It's on the road. It's still gonna probably be a fight. So I think 2-1.
Yeah, Aaron, you were a little bit more confident. You said what, 9-0?
I mean, if we start out fast and then park the bus in the 20th minute, they might actually get a goal, like you're saying, Brian. I could see. I'll go with 2-0. I'll stick with that.
Nice, awesome. I think it'll be a draw, a 1-1. A road draw, which isn't great, but it's also not bad. I think Toronto's tied 3 of their last 5 games too, so it could feel like another draw for them. And so, cool. Let's move on to this DC game as well, right? We've touched a little bit on it, right? Again, Brian, another opponent where Charlotte FC should be able to beat.
Yep. And for me, it's Ty Baribo is the concern here. He's had 9 goals in his last 9 games. Their new DP coming down from Philly. And actually, for me, DC is a little bit more of a tricky situation. They haven't been winning, but they haven't lost either. I think it's 1 win and 5 draws in their last 6. So they've stuck around, hung in, been tough to beat of late. That's why they're in 9th, still kind of hanging out around the play-in game right now. Again, a team that Charlotte should feel confident in, especially at the bank. Again, Baribo, the piece in the attack that they need to watch out for. But I mean, I would say DC's improved from being a wooden spoon team, but it's not also they haven't made a huge jump. So this should be a team where going into it again, Dean has never lost to DC, so I guess I'm teeing it up there. So
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Well, remember, I think it was last year where they had 2 red cards. And we barely were able to beat them, in DC though.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Yeah. So, we'll see. Obviously, at the bank, even down 2 men. Or DC being down 2 men at the bank is a different situation than in DC. But I still feel like Charlotte should go into this game, this whole stretch this week with a good amount of confidence that they should hang and be able to get the job done, even if they have to rotate a little bit.
Absolutely. Aaron, DC at the bank. Dean's never lost to them.
It'll be interesting. We watched DC hang with Nashville recently, and I think that's impressive. I mean, I walked away. It was 2-2. If you ask me right now how we would play against Nashville, I'd say we would get smashed. So I could see DC walking away with a win at home.
Dang,
just
bro.
based on it being a short week and them just being in form. We are talking about should we have a new player start? What is the tactic to switch back to? I just don't think we're an inconsistent run yet. This could be one of those games where we just drop points at the bank.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think this is for me. I'd be very confident in this game going into this match. Home match, DC, like you said, can be tricky, but we should be able to beat them, right? And so another thing I want to add is the top 4 race is gonna be very, very tough, right? So these next 2 games, Charlotte can continue to solidify themselves in one of those spots, right? Especially 3rd and 4th, right? If you look at the table now, Nashville is at 43 points, right? Inter Miami is at 38 points, Chicago's at 32, New England's at 30, and Charlotte FC is at 28 points. And Chicago still has a game in hand, right? So I would say the first 2 spots, potentially the 3rd, are kind of claimed, right? I think 3rd and 4th are still up for grabs, but definitely 1 and 2 for me are kind of becoming out of sight for Charlotte FC, right? And so these 2 games, Are we going to continue to solidify ourselves and fight for that fourth spot, or are we going to start kind of getting away? And you mentioned it a little bit, Brian, with those mini runs that Dean Smith mentions to his player, and 5 away games, right? Can we pull significant points here in these next couple of matches?
Yeah, I think this stretch of games, this next 7 games is maybe the most important of the season. I had at the beginning of the year, I kind of split it up into quadrants and just kind of saw the stretches like, okay, well, this is, and especially the way the season's played out, where Charlotte has dropped more home points than I think most of us expected them to up until this point. So that changes the narrative, because now you have to find points on the road to make up for that. And just the fact that all these road games that they're playing right now are against favorable matchups. So if you're going to pick up points on the road, pick them up in the games that you are. I mean, I think there's probably a pretty good chance that Charlotte FC is a decent favorite in this Toronto game on Wednesday. So like in the games where you're favored on the road or close to favored on the road, can you get those all 3 of those points? And I think that's what makes this stretch really pivotal for Charlotte's season. Because you don't want to go into the final stretch where you have to go to Miami and try to get 4th spot in Miami, right? You want to have, so you're not really playing a full season at that point. You're trying to like clinch things up a week or 2 early.
Absolutely. Aaron, anything you want to add that for the top 4, race?
No, I agree that this needs to be like a slingshot to end the season. Just from a confidence standpoint of like, everybody being in a good mindset of we are, unbeatable. Or that 9-game streak we saw last year, that was the most confident I saw everybody in this team going into a game like, we're going to win. There's no doubt about it. There's no better time to get that mentality until running up to playoffs, because playoffs are long in the MLS. I mean, you have to go through series of games to even get to the final. So
yeah, I think the final is December 18th, something like that. It's what, 5 or 6 weeks of playoffs.
It's a lot of consistency, and I think we always talk about how consistent is Charlotte. So whatever we can do to set ourselves up of like mentally being there is important.
Absolutely. And then the one last topic I want to talk about before we end the show, is, and I think it goes hand in hand, 2 of the topics. One is, we asked Brian, you asked Dean Smith about, bringing in a signing, right, with that last senior roster spot available, right? And so also we asked Leah Labata, hey, is your future still here at Charlotte FC? And he gave us a very, what is it called? Like, not political answer, but a very like
PR
answer, right? And so, which again goes back into, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with Charlotte FC where like, I just don't know, like from what I see in the conversations I've had, like things are supposed to be going this way and they're either taking longer than they need to, or things aren't being finalized, but I don't know the reasoning behind that, right? And so what we do know is that there's going to be a new player signed, right? And so I would expect to see a new player here this week, latest next. So talk to us, Brian, about what you asked Dean and what would you expect from that domestic player?
Well, I mean, I think there's a decent chance it's a like for like or something similar on the right wing for Kerwin Vargas, if I had to guess. I think it's intriguing, especially knowing now that Dean really favored him so much in terms of Vargas's defensive work rate, and that he was literally kind of changing the structural setup of how they defended off the ball and set up their midfield once Vargas was no longer a part of the squad. So that makes me think if it is a right winger, they better be able to play more like a right wing back at times and have that 2-way play. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I could easily see them. Dean's back in the situation where like, hey, I don't trust him to play 2 ways. I got to go back to my flat 3. Pep Biel's going back out wide, right? And I could see that situation playing out. Like, you don't know until these guys come in. So I'm interested to see how. I mean, I think the other spot would be midfield. Adding us another midfielder. If the situation is, well, I actually want to keep if Dean's thinking I want to keep Pep Biel out wide, inverting him with like Cleary or Byrne, pushing high to invert him inside, I want more options in the midfield. So I think those are really the two spots you're looking at, because we've already touched on like the back line seems to have their 1 and 2 options across the board. Everywhere else is kind of set up, I think, at this point, unless they throw out a striker. Jorge, you've mentioned this more than I have, like more than anybody, about having that like that third option, that veteran guy, that like Callum Wilson type guy who's just
Jamie Vardy's available.
Yep, right. Somebody who,
but he's not domestic.
Yeah. So, but like finding that guy who's like, capable of playing a strong 15 minutes is not gonna, shy away from the spotlight or that big moment because they've been there before. That kind of veteran, like a Joseph Martinez, who just signed for the Columbus Crew, like somebody like that who like maybe not going to take the main workload anymore, but is capable of showing up for maybe those key moments.
Yep. Aaron,
you finished it off. I would like to see a striker. Selfishly, I mean, I said it whenever we were pursuing Callum Wilson. Like, it would be nice for at the time a Don to learn from a veteran, and then now be it Archie, maybe get a little bit of learning from a veteran. Those are two very just raw guys that are stealing each other's game time, and I think that's a very difficult thing to ask from both of them, to become that guy whenever it's like who's going to start next game type of deal. So it'd be nice if they had someone to learn off of versus just having two young guys, be at the 9, and hopefully Max ups their level of play. To your point, Brian, though, I think a winger is more plausible. Just if we can get another guy on the other side of the field. We saw it whenever Max came in. The left side of the team was flying, and the right side of the team, you could just visually see the different sides of the pitch. If they could switch it to Max, it was a play about to happen. But if it ended up on the right side of the field, it either died, it immediately got passed back, or it was just it was lost possession. So it's give or take with what they do.
Absolutely. Also, I want to ask you guys this, a little spicy, but Brian, right now, would you take selling Abada and bringing in a new DP, or would you rather keep Abada, seeing that he's kind of like been a better player for us these last 2 months, and see him finish out the year?
I mean, I think I'm ready for the move on. Like, I've been kind of in that spot where it's like, it just seemed like this was I feel like this is something that Charlotte tends to do. And I think this is one thing that like teams like Nashville are like, if you want to like hone in on what Nashville has done so well in a short period of time to get to the level that they're at, I think they make decisions pretty quickly, right or wrong, and they have this, and those decisions that they make have like opened themselves up to then take advantage of other situations. I think Espinosa is a great example of that. They had the DP spot already open. They were kind of already set up, ready to go. I think we're seeing Chicago doing something similar. They have a DP spot open. Berhalter's just now playing the summer and figuring out how to add a third piece when they're already the third best team in the East, and they still have a DP spot open. And they're like, people are talking about them needing a DP 10, but they also have Andre Franco coming back, like, who also looked really good at the 10 last year, but he's injured right now. So like, I feel like if you're looking at the top teams in the East specifically as case studies, it's that they like the ones that are finding success have moved off of guys and then left themselves open to take advantage of the market. And we're seeing Charlotte not be able to do that.
Absolutely. And so that was going to go to my point of this, where like it's really time to move on from Abada, right? The second piece to that, and you touched a little bit on it, but I want to harp on it, is that the main message from the front office is, we want to go to this European calendar window. This summer market is when we can actually bring in the type of DPs that we want for this team. If you keep him, then you go into the winter market with, needing a DP, right? And what are you going to do, right? You're not more players are probably not going to move middle of the year versus, right now in the summer. So what, we're going to have to wait till next summer for another DP, right? And so, or, risk trying to lure somebody off of their club, right, in that winter window. So right now, those decisions should have been made, and I I thought they were made, right? But we're gonna see how things play out. Obviously, there's still time, right? So we're gonna see what happens in the next week or two, right? And so, like I've been mentioning, it's more in terms of a domino effect versus what action can come in and go out. But again, your best DPs, quote unquote, based on what Charlotte's saying, come in this summer window, right? When players are looking to move, when there's a new season, right, where they're not in the middle of a season and you have to pull them away from their current club midway through a European calendar, if those are the players that you're looking for, right?
Which I do
So,
think, just to finish that,
mhm.
that the hard part is convincing's the disrespectful word, but asking another club to buy Abada whenever he has however many months left, like it's December, then his contract is up, so it's like asking a team to buy him versus him just leaving for free. I think that's the hard part of it. And historically, we know Charlotte has tried to get a lot of money out of every single player. Sometimes they've asked too high. They got a good amount out of Vargas. So are they asking too much whenever he's leaving in December anyway for free? And I think that's the downside to things.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I don't think they get any money out of Abada. Like
I don't either. I don't either. But
Berhalter had a
We'll
ton of
take it.
momentum. He was at a U.S. Men's National Team World Cup, hosting World Cup. Like, was a best 11 MLS midfielder the last 2 years in a row. Has a ton of momentum, and on 6 months Vancouver got $2 million for him, and he's like a best 11 MLS midfielder for 2 straight years. U.S. Men's National Team World Cup, went around to 16. Like, looks good when he got moment. Like, there's no way there's any money on the table for Abada.
That's where I stand. You're more blunt about it.
Yeah, like at this point, if you could just get him off your roster and they take care of the contract, that's a dub, bro.
Yeah, that's a massive one.
And so yeah, because there's no real value there, especially when, like you mentioned, you've got 6 months left on a guy, right? And so just for me, like if you're looking at things long term, right, like
Yep.
what are we doing right now? Because again, last year this time he had an opportunity to leave, at least get him some minutes somewhere else, right? And then they didn't let him go, and they barely used him. The key games he wasn't used, and so with
Now
that,
they could exercise his option. He has an option, and then that changes things a little bit. So then you're stuck with him. So
imagine.
That would be crazy.
Charlotte, don't piss me off. Tomorrow we hear a contract extension for Liel Abada.
They waited on us to say something. They're like, all right, let's drop the news.
And
guys.
he knows it too. He knows it too. Like the way he spoke about it, like it's like, hey, like
he recited that before he said it.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
and
But he also, I mean, this actually, for all the situations that Abada has been in over the last year that have not gone his way, like not getting the loan option to get minutes because he needed to be here as depth, and then not getting minutes as depth, so he was just here anyways. He's now played himself into a situation where, like, if he keeps up this run of form, going into the winter on a free, in a decent run of form, like say he like goes off and like wins Charlotte a playoff game in the MLS playoff, and keeps like the scoring form up, he now sets himself up to where like being a free agent in that situation is not a bad scenario. It's a best case situation for him right now.
The only thing I would correct you on is he didn't set himself up. The lack of options has produced so many opportunities for him this season.
Yeah.
And at some point it had to hit, and it's hitting right now, know? So
broken clock's right twice a day.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, he was like what, a foot away from a brace on Saturday. So it's like if he could clean up just the small things, you're right, Brian. Like he could find something, but
all right. Some quick score predictions for DC. Brian, I'll start off with you.
I think that one's gonna be 2-0. Charlotte.
Okay, nice. Aaron?
Let's go 2-0 DC.
Dang.
Dang.
A big win in Toronto and then a loss at home. That would be peak Charlotte.
I
I'm gonna go-
actually did look. We're betting underdogs against Toronto as well.
Really? Is it
Yeah,
big?
we're plus 210.
Really? Plus 210?
Yeah, plus 210. Toronto's plus 120, and the draw is plus 260. About
That
average.
seems honestly, that seems a little disrespectful at plus. I mean, this guy obviously their road form, but I mean,
Yeah.
they don't have Mihailovic or Rosario, and they won, but I feel like that's a
Hey,
little.
it's a Josh
Yeah.
Sargent breakout game.
Dude,
Watch it.
I forgot he was even there. All right, I'm gonna go with a 2-0 Charlotte, and so 4 points from the next 6. I think is a decent return. 7 out of the last 9. Is a pretty good return in my opinion. With that said, Aaron, where can people find you at?
Yeah, AP Bright, most socials.
Awesome, and Brian.
At Bam Mauer Media, written content, topin90.com.
Nice, and I'm Jorge Gonzalez. We're TB90 on all our socials. This concludes episode 66 of the TB90 podcast. Have a great night. Thank you for joining us. We love you, man.